here. Let's give it another minute because we've got a few people still coming in. I don't see Flip yet.
I keep seeing people pop on, and then when I add them to, there's Flip, to
Okay.
panelists, they disappear.
All right, well, that looks like we can start. Would you roll the agenda back up to the top, please, Deb? Thanks. For 3 meetings now, I have tried to print the agenda before the meeting and my printer has failed. So I am relying on you, Deb, to have that in front of us. So
Perfect.
I will call this meeting to order. It is 6:32. All board members are present, along with Superintendent Flip and staff. Welcome all attendees. We're glad you're here to hold us accountable for the work that we're doing. And our new almost board member, Carly, is still in the participant list in the participant list because she hasn't been sworn in yet, but we're looking forward to doing that very soon. So our agenda is before us. Bridget, would you offer the land recognition, please?
I was talking and had the mute on, of course. Yes, I'd love to do this. I'd like to be able to share our student work. So this month is Native American Heritage Month. Just want to share that with folks. And in preparation, asked some instructors in the district to see if their students would be willing to share some of the good work that they're doing. And so I think there are 5 student groups on this PowerPoint presentation. So we'll kind of move through. And so students worked and did collaborative writing together and drafted land and water acknowledgements. So I'll go ahead and just read these. The first one is from Eliana, Christian, and Sarah. And so in the future, we hope the Duwamish people get more recognition and that they get to own their land again. Their treaty was broken by the colonizers in 1851. Tukwila, Burien, Seattle, and Redmond are owned by the Duwamish people, and all of those town cities have lots of plants and trees, which also is owned by the Duwamish people. This is from Queen, Dorsa, and Ilhan. We recognize that the Duwamish people tribe owned this land before the colonizers stole it from them, and their land runs through Seattle, Puyallup, Kent, Renton, etc. The Duwamish people are still living on this land, and they're still waiting for their justice and respect. They need to be recognized and acknowledged. They want their justice now. Tukwila is named after hazelnut trees. Okay, and so this one is by Nini, Addie, and Najma. In the past, indigenous peoples' land were filled with trees and rivers. We acknowledge that the first people in this land were the Duwamish tribe. We recognize that this land was stolen from the Duwamish tribe. We hope that the missing and murdered indigenous women and girls will be acknowledged just as missing and murdered white women and girls. And this particular picture, I just want to point out, this picture is actually this is a special picture, at least for me. This is one of the last remaining Duwamish River actual beds that still exist following the dredging of the water of the river. And you can see how there's like mud flats that are down below. This picture is actually taken below where the Duwamish, this is the Hahapus tribal longhouses were on this land, this particular spot. And after ceremonies, after celebrations, they would take their buckets of shells and everything else and throw it kind of over this. And if you actually go to this place, you can see hundreds of years worth of shells and sort of the refuse. So this is just a very spiritual place and a very important, this picture in particular is a very meaningful one. So I just want to share that and give honor. Okay, go ahead and move on to the next one. This is by Se Zaifa and Ahmed. We acknowledge that we're on the land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish tribe. From trees you see to the mountains you see. Imagine having your property taken away, having your children forced to speak a different language. And last, but certainly not least, we have Asante, Alice, and Leslie. Right, and I just want to acknowledge that there's hearts there in the eyes. I just love that. Right now, that this land is full of trees and of Duwamish history. We acknowledge, respect, honor, and appreciate their land. And so I just want to bring in and honor our student voices, our student work, and our teachers. The classes that these were from was from Ms. Tran at Showalter.
That's great. Thank you for bringing that before us. And maybe we'll be able to use some of those same land recognitions in the future. We move to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion about the agenda before us tonight? If you are in agreement of approving the agenda, please say yes.
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 Anyone
Yes.
opposed? Okay. All right, I heard 4 yeses. It is approved. Deb, is there any public comment for us tonight?
There is no public comment.
Okay, well, public out there, please speak to us. Tell us what you're thinking, what we need to hear. And you don't have to do it in this public comment format. You can always do it in email or in person with any one of your board members. Let's move on to reports. Race and equity update.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, and I really appreciated hearing those student voices at the beginning of the for the land recognition. It's great to see that and seeing our students and hearing about our school improvement plans from the elementary school and just seeing all of our students back in class. It's always great to hear those voices because that's what really I think recharges most people as challenging as the school year has been. Actually hearing and seeing those students, especially when they are learning, is just what it's all about. So for our race and equity piece, I have a couple of pieces that I'd like to touch upon. One is we continue to work on our SRO opportunities. Those actually got pushed back by about a week or two just because of availability and trying to coordinate with our facilitators. So we want to make sure we've got enough time to get notifications out to each of the stakeholder groups. So we'll be doing that. Again, I've touched upon it before, but we'll have different stakeholder groups that'll have the opportunities to speak amongst themselves, as well as ask some clarifying questions. And that'll be a student group, staff group, and then a community group. So we'll get that information out to everybody. And then when we're have completed meeting with those stakeholder groups, there'll be a report that takes in all of that information plus anything else that we may have heard or had there. And then a report will be done by the person that we are hiring to help facilitate this. And then I'll be able to present that to the board for opportunities on what we would look like. And from that, we can continue with what we've been doing, we can modify it, or we can do something different, which are usually the opportunities that come with a recommendation. So we'll be working with Chief Driver. Again, he's been very open to whatever process we're going through, and so we'll have that opportunity. The other is on Saturday, we'll be talking about, we'll be hearing another school improvement plan, but also just additional information about how we will be refreshing and taking a look at the district strategic plan. We have a couple of proposals that we'll be looking at that are pretty robust. And those will provide some opportunities to get a good amount of community meeting and feedback from that, and then present that to the board as well. So I look forward to that. In particular, importance to each of these pieces, both with the SRO, the facilitator that we have, the study that we were looking at, as well as these two proposals for the district strategic plan. I made it very clear that the use of our race and equity toolkit is imperative in reviewing all of those pieces. So that perspective is an important step for us. We want to make sure that we're demonstrating, using all of those lenses, taking that information into account, and seeing what else we are missing or need to hear from. So I just want to make sure that the board is aware that we are trying to implement that using our tool, because that's why we have it, is to use it in these major decisions. So that's what we're trying to do. So those are the major pieces. The last piece, just on the race and equity piece, is more of an equity issue. I really am appreciative of the fact that we will, in this particular community, will have the opportunities for students age 5 to 11 to receive a vaccine if that's what they and their families are choosing to do. That will begin next week, November 16th. There should be more information going out about that. But I think especially in communities that oftentimes have less access to health opportunities, it's really important for the Tukwila community to be able to have this. And we've had a great partnership all along, offering these vaccine clinics for students and staff and the public, with our partnership through Costco and King County Department of Health. So that next step of 5 to 11-year-olds will be available starting next week. And then again, we will continue with those clinics every 3 weeks, so that those who are receiving their first shot 3 weeks later can get their second shot. And for some, they can get their booster shot if it's been several months. So that's the bulk of the race and equity updates I have. And as I get more information, I'll make sure to get that out to folks at other updates. And yeah, it's just, we've got a lot of good work going on, and I just appreciate the momentum that staff at all buildings at every opportunity as they work with our students are really leaning into the work and trying to make Tukwila a great place for our students and families. So I appreciate all staff for doing that.
Can you speak to who's been organizing these clinics?
The clinics have been the COVID team. So Mr. Draganov, Ms. Maestro, Ms. Jones have been working with our connection with Costco. That's who the provider has been.
Oh, thank you to them.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Herndon on this? Okay, let's move to the COVID update.
Hello. Hello. Tons of really fun changes and updates within the past 2 weeks. Just like Dr. Herndon mentioned, we'll be having our clinic next week, which is very exciting. We have all of our liaisons on deck, and they're helping out with communicating with families and getting the word out to our community. They'll also be on site during the clinic days. So if families need help filling out forms or need any translations, they'll be there to help out with that. Another internal change we made to the websites, we've been working with our communication specialists, Soapbox, and they've been helping us with creating FAQs, as well as getting all of our materials translatable. So you could just copy paste it and it'll be able to translate to whatever language you need. And then we also follow the DOH's guidelines very closely. And recently, they've made a couple of changes, one of which is the 7-day quarantine with a PCR test. So in order to kind of prevent the, I wouldn't say unnecessary, but prevent or to try to limit the loss of school time as possible, the DOH has required schools to, instead of doing a 14-day quarantine, doing a 7-day quarantine with PCR tests, and that would be taken 5 days after exposure, and then otherwise they would do a 14-day quarantine. Additionally, we also will be testing our unvaccinated high-risk sports individuals or students, and we'll be doing that 3 to 4 days before a game, and then the day of the game. So just to keep everyone safe and to try to limit school time loss, we have implemented that into our system. And then also performing arts as well. If we have any dancers, any theatrical students, or any speech and debate students who will be performing without their masks, if they're unvaccinated, they also have to follow that the rapid PCR test twice. And I believe that is about it for me.
Does anyone have any questions? You're doing a great job of keeping us informed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to our consent agenda. Approval of minutes from, oh, that's right. We do all these together. So our minutes and our vouchers. Do we have a motion to approve these?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second. And all of those in favor of approving these items, say yes.
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 All right, there were 4 yeses, so it is approved. Move on to our, I'm sorry, I'm looking at something else here. Move on to our board discussion. Student representative to the board of directors. I'm not sure who's going to lead this discussion. I know it is important to us. Is anyone prepared to lead this discussion?
So I think the reason why this was on there, we do have 2 students who I believe have filed the application for being a student representative. We do have to reconnect with our other student who had started in the spring, but since has not shown up. So we've got some work to do with our already existing one. But I know that there had been some discussion or concern about the number of students applying to become a student rep to the board. So I think that was the genesis of this item.
And so, oh, go ahead.
I don't know who would be able to answer this, but I'm just curious in terms of who was communicated or how it was communicated. You know, who was, I guess, what teachers or staff or principals. I'm just curious how this was communicated out, and then not just communicated out, but what was the dialogue? What was the communication back from the community on this?
Yeah, that I don't know. Typically, the process runs through the high school, and there are opportunities that are presented to students like a lot of the things that they have. I know in the past they've looked at the leadership class, but it's beyond just the leadership class. I think in the past we have had representatives who do serve that are not necessarily enrolled in the leadership class. So I don't have all of the details that are out there. It hasn't been uncommon in the past to have only one or two people applying for it. I think it's, some of that's just the life of the students and what they have an interest in. And some of it's just the timing of coming to a board meeting that's in the evening. I think several of them we've seen in the past, sometimes during a season, if a student is a participant in a sport, then sometimes they don't make the meetings during their particular sport. So for students who are really active in other extracurricular activities, I think it makes it a challenge just because of the timing of it. But I can get more information from the foster administrative team as to what was put out and how many staff responded to that. But we do have the process outlined, I believe, in the procedures about how it goes out. But I don't know if we modified any of that. Well, there had to be some modification in the spring because we didn't have a lot of students that were in there. I think originally it went out before we were back in person, but I can follow up with that. But be that as it may, we do have two applicants that are ready, at least to be reviewed, but that's up to the board if you want to continue to wait and see if there are more and put the information out again, or if you'd like to move forward and review the two applicants that are present.
And to review those, do we do them during a meeting like this or during a work session or a Saturday session?
Yeah, it's a different process. It's not during a public meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we can pull that up again for board members to review.
Yeah, it's always been an interview kind of process. So, one or more board members, and we always have on the interview team the current student reps, and in the past we've had administrators. I mean, I think it's a good practice for students to do an interview for a job. They're going to do that in their lives, and so I always find it a pretty good process. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know. We can always work. I think we can always work on getting the word out better to students. I think, if we've got a couple of applicants, I would want to just go ahead and do the process and get them here. If I am interested from the administration as to what the kind of the barriers are to getting the student voice. If we need to, provide some other ways of doing it, other than necessarily just being at the meeting. They can submit their reports in writing and video. I mean, we can get creative depending on what is preventing the students from getting involved. Yeah, so I'd have to hear from the administrators and from the students as to what seems to be the blocks.
So I know that Director Larson and I last year were the two that volunteered to meet with I believe we had two applicants in previous year. And we had during that process and after that process actually discussed the concerns with the lack of access and in terms of if there's gatekeeping, what's happening there. And I'm still not hearing too much clarity in how this opportunity is being communicated to students, what students know of it, who knows of it, what are the breakdowns that might be happening, regardless of what past practice has happened in the past. I'm really leaning on our leadership transformation framework that we've been learning and trying to practice. And I'm really, this sense of urgency versus know when to go slow, the quality in relation to quantity versus quantity over quality. I really think that we ought to be looking at how we're practicing here as a board in terms of, and to this day, regardless of practice, I'm not hearing the student perspective in terms of not only from one person, but I'm just curious what's, is there something with us that is not welcoming? Is there something with how we do business that is not, are we not being inclusive as a board? And that is, so I would love to hear from more students and hear, what would serve them. What is the best way for us to do outreach and communicate with them? Because maybe how we're doing it is not working well for them. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And then also I'm really concerned. I'm worrying about our student, that we haven't had her part here at the table, what's going on there. And I'm not sure what outreach or communication has happened there. And it's hard for me to even have a meeting tonight without her being at the table. And so those are my thoughts. I do not think that the last information I heard was that we had one student, and that student was a relative of our former representative. And that just alone is just not okay. And even if we only have two, how did they hear about it? Who were, and do other students know of this opportunity too? And so I'm not okay with moving forward yet again with the practice of, yeah, but this is important. Well, let's just do it this year and let's move on. It's like that is not demonstrating the type of transformational leadership our district needs.
So Bridget, do you have a suggestion on what we should do, what we should come out of this meeting with doing?
Yeah, I would say honestly, I don't have the answer. I say ask the students. What do they
But we
think
need a
about?
process. We need a process for that. How do you see us going about that? Do you see us as directors each taking a step in that? Do you see, I just need some, give us some direction maybe that we can talk about.
Yeah, and once again, I would say that I cannot make that answer without hearing from students. So once again, that you can see that here we are doing our business and we're like, yeah, come sit at our table. Well, if year after year, we're not getting a lot of student participation, what are we doing wrong? That's all I can say, honestly, at this point, is to sort of point out that there's a need here for us to look at that. And I don't think it's mine to answer. I think it's communities to answer.
Any thoughts from anyone else? I will make a commitment to speak to the leadership class teacher at the high school and see what their thoughts are on this as they work with the high school leadership. Not that I think the leadership are the ones who necessarily need to represent to the board, but that is a pathway we have taken before, as I understand it. I'm also ready to talk to the principal, although I hear what you're saying, Bridget, we should be talking to the students. I'm not sure how to do that in general.
I would like to have a discussion, and I really think it's important to hear whatever's on each other's minds. And so I know I've been very transparent, have shared what's on my mind. I just would wonder, like in this and on this issue where we do not have, if it's student involvement, student perspective, we do not know how to reach our students in the, at Foster High School or whatnot. To me, that's pretty important stuff. And I'm just curious for folks who haven't shared yet, maybe what are you hearing, or what are, what are you sitting with right now?
Well, for me, it's this is a both and kind of thing. So we have 2 students that are in the queue and are, apparently want to get involved. So I'd like to take them up on that. And then at the same time, and this is where I think maybe it's the go slow to go fast kind of thing. And that is, for me, I've always felt that, we need to, coordinate a process through the administration and particularly have respect for the superintendent and the principal to, get from them and see if we can develop a better process over time and hopefully not too much time to, get more students involved in the process. We're gonna, I guess our next item is improving inclusive practices. So this kind of goes into, there's a whole set, and I won't necessarily go through them all now, but things that we have done in the past to get better student voice. And they've been we've done them for a while and then stopped doing them and done them for a while and stopped doing them. So there's a whole set of things that we could do to work on that issue. So I'll probably save the list until the next topic, but that's where I am.
And I agree with Dave. If we've got 2 students who are interested, I hesitate to change the process after they've already pursued it this far. But I think you're right, Bridget. We need to look into it and see how can we improve it. But we do have 2 students who have, started their application and have shown an interest. And I'd hate to change the rules and requirements on them in the middle of this situation.
I can certainly get feedback from the principal and ask him what's been done, and then hearing about the other opportunities or concerns that the board has, see if there are some additional ways in talking with cabinet as well as colleagues. I can check with my colleagues to see if they have any different luck. I know in Seattle, it was always a challenge as well to get students, and there are a lot of students there.
It's a huge time commitment.
Yeah, it can be, but I think some of the items that Director Larson mentioned before too, about if there are ways that they can put together a report that may conflict with other timepieces, I think there are ways we could probably accommodate for that so that we can still hear their voice in different ways. So I think there are some opportunities that we can probably explore that we haven't done in the past. And over the last year with the addition of technology, a lot of that will hopefully be a little bit easier to do.
Is there a potential for the students to be able to earn credit for something like this?
Yes, I mean, from what I've seen, many of the students in the past use this as an opportunity to, in their college applications, they use that as another club or responsibility that they promote in their resume, building a resume.
So our current policy does give a half a credit for this. So that's already there. I'll start just some things that have been done in the past. I know I'm a big fan of incorporating things, into the classroom. So there was a number of years ago an English language arts teacher at Foster that had an assignment related to persuasive writing. And so the students actually wrote to city council people, school board members, different people that about concerns that they had, and the assignment was part of the class. And so at that point, we received a bunch of letters from students with their assignment. And at that point, I decided we should just go into the classroom and talk to them, and rather than respond via writing. So actually, a couple of us went in and just actually had a great conversation with the students about their ideas. So that's just, there's whole lots of ideas. Before pre-COVID, there was the English language arts and social studies departments at Foster were producing these public service announcements. So these are videos that they showed every year around issues that the students were concerned about: environment, school board, police accountability, whatever they wanted to get into. And they presented that in a public forum where they could come. And then, we left that, and then COVID happened and that kind of went on hold for a while, but now hopefully it'll come back. And the next step on that one was I was advocating with them, okay, now they've presented their ideas and their videos. Now let's and have a period afterwards where the school board directors, the city council people, that they were wanting to direct their ideas to, could actually sit down and have a conversation with them about their videos. So, I mean, and I've got more of these. I mean, there's just a long list of things that we could do.
I think that other messages from students is kind of recognizing that our meetings, what we talk about, how we talk about them, and how we do business is very white supremacist culture, and that's very uncomfortable for many people to have to sit in it and be part of it, and I mean, I remember students coming to our meetings while we were still public, and just in awe that they were brave enough to come into some of our space, in terms of just I don't know if we recognize how just our power and privilege, how intimidating or how difficult or how painful and harmful that can be too for some folks. And so I do not think that all the voices are being listened to. I also think in terms of the both and thinking, is that I don't even know if one or two students at the table is enough. How are we sharing power? How are we, creating other ways for people to engage, for students to engage and be able to share their wisdom and knowledge and expertise with us? And is one or two students enough for that? Just things to think about. And it is very much related to what we're about to talk about next.
Are we at a point where we want to move on to this next conversation?
I'm curious what the next what the next steps are on this. I'm
On the
hearing sort of a right.
On the first,
Yeah.
on A?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to follow up with the principal, figure out what has taken place thus far, get some feedback about additional ideas in which we can make the opportunity available to folks here, try and hear from students. I've got some suggestions from some of the cabinet members as well that we can take a look at, and to just hear from the Foster administration about just kind of where students are so far this year coming back, like their bandwidth for all sorts of things. So being in the building, I think they're, they hear quite a bit about what's happening in the hallways and kind of where students are. So it's just getting a pulse about where students actively are right now. And it's a challenge. We can figure out what we can do, and it's kind of similar to getting people involved even in running for the positions for school board themselves. Oftentimes it's one person, or sometimes it could be 4 people or 5 people, and it's just kind of the interest level within the community about if there are particular topics. So I just want to make sure we're in a position where we can continually add to any progress or changes where we have, without trying to set something up that we won't be able to follow through with immediately. So I'm just trying to look for those intermediate steps to begin with right now. So that means, for me, that means touching base with the principal at Foster and figuring out what we have available there. And then I can send that in my memo update next week to the board. So I'll do that. Try and get to that this week. We do have, I know we won't have people on Thursday. So I'll try and get to them tomorrow or Friday.
Dr. Herndon, can you also look into our senior rep? Maybe
Yes.
just figure out a way to check in, see what they want, what, you know, how would they like to proceed moving forward too? Because that's another, Harpmead is another part of our board that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, we have reached out to her a few times and didn't really get a response. So we do need to get, I'll try and find her in person within the building.
So do we need to vote on whether we, so we've got 2 applications from students now. So do we need to vote on whether we move ahead with that, or?
Let me double check to see, to make sure where we are in the process with the applications, and to confirm if students are still interested in that would be the other piece. So they could have put something in, you know, a couple months ago and they haven't heard anything. So I'd want to confirm with them to make sure that there's still a level of interest.
So could we tentatively say if there's a level of interest that we move forward with interviews?
That would be up to, yeah, that would be up to you all as board members if you would like to proceed.
Board members, would you want to agree to that?
I would.
Edna?
I would, and I'd like to pursue better avenues.
And Bridget?
I would like to hear from Foster High School more information about how the original was distributed, how many students had access. Are they recognizing that not everybody had a fair chance, equitable chance to know about it and have a chance? Just because 2 people did does not mean it was done in an equitable way. If the information we come back does say that yet, and we agree that it was equitable, you know, it's a different story. I just, as trying to practice as a transformational leader, I cannot be okay with just moving forward, making assumptions when I have not heard from the community.
So what would you need to hear? I mean, I know what you need to hear. How will you need to hear that to decide if we can move forward with these 2 applicants? How will that happen for you?
I guess, like, I hear Dr. Herndon actually practicing it, you know, reaching back out, trying to close the loop. How did it go? Do students know about this? I mean, to me, that is the answer. So what Dr. Herndon is already responding with, and what you're willing to do, Dr. Herndon, to me is the answer, that you are actually willing to do that work and to make that connection with the schools before we, the board, make decisions to move forward on things.
I guess my question is, do we need to wait until the next meeting to get the information from Dr. Herndon, or can we get that in the interim and move forward if it meets criteria? Well, I guess I would like to suggest that we move forward because 3 of us feel like we're ready. And if you get the information that you need, then that would be 4 of us ready to move forward with some interviews and get some student voice present.
And I'm just going to say that it's unfortunate that our board is, as the majority of us are deciding that, because the majority of the students have not had voice yet, have not had, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'd love to be wrong, but I don't feel that we should be making decisions that impact our students, which it will, without making sure that we've checked with them.
Yeah, and I hear your voice on that. All right, are we okay with where we are? It's uncomfortable. I admit that. I feel that. But I think we are at a place where we can move to the next agenda item. So I'm going to ask us to talk about improving inclusive practices, a community voice, and I believe that the next one, also the formation of work groups, is in relation to how we improve inclusive practices. So I think we can do both of these things together. We have a couple of documents that Bridget has put together for us on community voice. And I believe we were at the point last time when we did this of compiling the list on one of them, the bottom part of one of them. Is it the first one, Deb?
My internet's a little slow. Give me a second while it pulls up.
Thank you.
So Jan, I'm more than happy to facilitate this conversation in terms of, because where we also left out is the information was shared, links and the ability to look into these was shared last month, with the hope that folks had a chance to actually look into these options and then be able to be ready to have a conversation on them. And I think that what I'd like us to do is actually take just a moment before we get started with that. And I'd like us to do just a little bit of a circle exercise. So as part of circle, it's sort of creating that space where all voices are important, all are included, all are, we recognize who's not here tonight, and also just kind of center community wisdom in the process. And so, and to also recognize that sometimes there is the ability to have difficult conversations. We do not have to agree, but how do we create space for everybody and then be able to acknowledge how important everybody is in the community? And so what I'm going to ask us to do, and then I'll totally leave it in your hands, is to just for a moment think about somebody that is part of our community that you can put in your heart tonight. Maybe somebody that you care about, someone that you're concerned about, someone that you're happy for, and for us to each share who that person is and why. And so and I'll go ahead and get started. So tonight, as part of this conversation, I'd like to, in my heart, I have HARPNEED in my heart. And I also have LGBTQIA students who are in our community, who are deserving of safety and are deserving of belonging and respect.
Well, for me, it's the same. I was thinking of heartbeat and just student voice in general, that we need to get that into all our conversations.
Not only student voice, but staff voice and community voice. We're very hyper focused on that, but we don't seem to be making as much progress as I think we'd all like to see happen.
I think I'm holding in my heart tonight a family of 8 that has returned to the district after a false hope someplace else and has returned with absolutely nothing. And they are gathering furniture this evening from my basement, from the church here, from different community resources to set up an apartment again. And the staff that are working are staff from our schools. And this family of 4 children and must be 5 children and 3 adults are overwhelmed, and I hold them all, the ones that are helping them and the family itself. I hold them all close in my heart.
Just want to thank everybody for sharing, and I also just want to invite any of the folks who are here in the meeting, either in chat or if you'd like to share, if you're able to share anyone else that you're holding in your heart today that you want to bring in to this process as we start to talk about inclusivity, you're welcome to do so. So we'll go ahead and just pause for a moment if anyone would like to. Well, for all of us, if you didn't feel safe or comfortable or didn't want to tonight, just want to acknowledge those people that you're holding in your hearts tonight. All right. So let's go ahead and shift. And I think for this discussion, because there are so many different opportunities to improve our inclusive practice and what we do as a board, I'm thinking that just maybe leave it open if there's any on the list that sort of stood out. Just for folks who are seeing this list for the first time, just a quick recap. Throughout COVID, reached out to different school boards and directors in King County, asking what are some good practices, how have you improved community participation and inclusivity, how have you reduced barriers and improved access for community participation in your board work. And these were on the list. These were some that seemed to help other districts, and so shared this with the district last spring. And tonight we're going to hopefully look at some and decide which ones. In my mind, I'd say, yeah, let's just do the whole list. That's where I'm at. And some of them might be easier than others. Some might be sort of that yes and or both and. Some might be quicker. Some might take more time. But I think I'll just open it up to the group. Are there any on the list that stand out as something that you feel would benefit the work that we do in our communities that we serve?
I think number 1 should be a center of focus for us.
So making sure that we're centering students, student voice, and any decisions that impact students.
Right. Which shouldn't be as hard as it seems to be.
So the way I kind of approached this was I agree with you. All of these are good ideas. So there's some that, to me seem like easy ones that could be done really quickly. I think was it number 16 is actually the superintendent follow-up response from meetings. That's actually already, I think, in our superintendent expectations document. So that seems like an easy one. The 17 public comments are emailed to the board simultaneously. That seems like a pretty easy one. Number 12, maybe if we want to have public comments that are, similar, this is how the legislature does theirs. They, somebody wants to give public comment online, they can just be put up to a panelist. And let's see, oh, number 15, public comment on each agenda item. That's the way city council does it. I mean, we could do that. Some of the other, let's see, 9. So, and this rolls into the next one, I guess, the work group. So there's 2 kind of groups of things that I was thinking would be good for maybe a work group. The one is, I guess, 9 and 10 that have to do with how we present to the community, how a board works. And so we have currently a board page on the website. And so, if we wanted to have maybe a couple people or whatever go and kind of look at that page and see if there's ways, some of these ideas about, was it 9, educate the community on role of board, recordings, agenda posted on board website. I think those, well, the agenda and minutes are there, but some other, you reference some of the other boards that have, I think, a little bit better presentation on their webpage in terms of the community. Here's how a board meeting works, and here's how you can plug into it and all that. So that would be, to me, a prime one for maybe a work group, couple of people to go ahead and kind of look at our current board work or our board webpage and see if we can, maybe improve it, make it a little more accessible to the public. And then the other work group potentially, or task force, or what, work group, I guess we're calling it, is the whole area of student voice. I mean, I mentioned some of the ones that, I've done in the past. There's a bunch of other ways that we could get students involved, more student involved in the budget process, to specifically reach out to them. We've done that occasionally, but we could do that more consistently. We can give, when we have student reps on the board, they can get, a kind of assignment. I mean, we're giving them credit. So other school districts have given them assignments to go and research a certain topic that they're interested in, and then bring it to the board with recommendations. There was another thing that we have done in the past, which I found really helpful, is there's something, I'm not sure if Foster is still doing this, but something to graduation requirement called a culminating project. And what they did was they would have, each student would have, as part of the graduation process, would have to reflect on their experience in the school district and talk about, what went well for them, what didn't go well for them, and their whole, and the staff did a really good job of, insisting that students really think about that and do some deep dive into, what was working, what was not working. And I occasionally have sat in on some of those, and those are really informative because the staff does a really good job of getting that and having the students really reflect on it. So there's something else. I know right now the Technical Children's Foundation's got a project going to try and recruit some students to, talk about, things that they're interested in, and then go present it to the school district or to the city council or whoever is appropriate. So there's a whole list of these things that a lot of them we have done off and on in the past, and some of them are new, but to kind of maybe help us focus on a few that we can start, working on to anyway address number 1 there, which is a biggie.
Just a quick chime in, number 19 is one that we had done in the past. Those were the family nights that liaisons used to do on a monthly basis. So we are gearing up to get those going again. And those were great when they were happening because they were on a particular topic. You know, they might be on graduation requirements, and all of our liaisons were there. They started with a community dinner and then would break into the language groups to go over written materials, any forms. They would have those translated and would also communicate with any questions in those top 5 languages. So I know we are gearing up to get those going again. So number 19 is a yes, for sure. And we're in the process of getting that one going.
Yeah, I'd chime in that I forgot that's on my list too. That was another biggie. And the nice thing about those is that they were, a lot of times we could use them to educate folks on some things that were going on, but in the breakout groups is what I don't, this is presumed, so they weren't called breakout groups at the time, I think, but little affinity groups or whatever. And also what happened in those is that the community would have a chance to just talk about whatever was of concern to them. And so that was always really helpful.
Yeah, I found those to be really informative as a board member, just to listen to what they were talking about. I can't wait to get back to those. I think it'll be really helpful. I think there's also some other ways to get some information, you know, listening to Constance talk about the attendance work that they've done at Thorndike, and the way that they've, you know, centered the student in what's going on in their lives. How do we then access that kind of information to let that inform us also? It can come from the schools themselves if they'll share that information also. So I think there's lots of ways that we can get this information, and I think it's imperative that we do that.
Jan, are there any on the list that stand out for you, or are you devising another option or another something that we could add?
Well, I think 1 and 2 are, for me, are targets, but they're very they're big and vague. I mean, they're really big, which is what we should be looking at, is big stuff. It's really hard to just say we're going to just do them without breaking them down into some smaller ways of doing it. So, I mean, one way would be to kind of pick the brains of the schools as to what our student experiences are, because I think our schools, our administrators, our teachers also know that information and can share that with us in ways that we're not getting right now, as well as, you know, direct interaction with students and families. I'm just adding that as another possibility.
I'm wondering what that would look like for us. Is it like visiting schools, or is it meeting with key stakeholders, like how that might look? I know, I'll give an example. Last year, I reached out to the PTAs and PTO in our district and asked if I could meet with them and learn a little bit more about the work that they're doing and what was important, what was happening during COVID and all that. And that was extremely helpful to get to meet with each of those parent groups. And then also reached out to like the race and equity committees that at the schools, and got to hear what their work was and what was going on. So I think like maybe it's like tapping into or asking, and maybe Dr. Herndon, if it's, I mean, because ultimately it's important to also communicate with you, that type of thing. But is that something that might be an option for us, that if there is a group that we'd like to meet with, or that we've been invited to attend, maybe we practice just more of that, like kind of across the district, right? So depending on what we're passionate about or what's going on, or who we want to build relationship with.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like asking the questions of what are the stories behind the data? What were the examples of how people have changed in the PDs that have been going on? Yeah, I think we get a lot of data. I don't think we get a lot of story. And for me, it's story that actually brings the voices forward. Is one way to bring voices forward. So I do love going out into the schools and just walking around and asking the kids and asking the teachers and whoever's there, you know, how's it going? What are you up to today? When the kids come through the food bank line here, you know, I'll ask them, how was school today? What did you learn today? And they'll tell me it was really boring, or they'll tell me that they, you know, saw a butterfly. And, you know, it just gives a little bit of input into what's going on. And I think for me, it's about asking questions, about getting out there and being in contact with the folks, and also inviting them in. And I've suggested that before, in that I would love to have more people, not only us going out and talking to people, but having them come in and talk to us, especially as groups, around a certain topic, whether it's school lunch or, you know, the schedule of the day, or, you know, whatever it is. I would love to have them come in as a class or as a group, to talk to us. So those are the things that I think help us access the voices of our community. And I'm not sure how that works into work groups. To me,
And
it's something each one of us does.
And during COVID, I felt like the staff felt like they really got to know the parents on a different level. And if we could find some way to maintain that, I could see where that would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, Edna, that and also hope that COVID we had to transform and change, and the hope was for us to transform how we do what we do in education, and kind of going back to sort of the same old, or kind of back to the can be really disparaging. I'll share 14, 15, and 16. So I don't know, Debbie, if you're writing down numbers or whatnot. So 14, public testimony, both at the beginning and the end. And so right now we are doing Zoom, and the current process is that the public comment needs to be submitted by
Did she freeze up or did I freeze up?
No, she
She
did.
froze up.
Frozen.
Hopefully she'll come back and be able to finish her thought.
Well, public comment needs to be submitted by noon of the day of the board meeting. I think that's what she was going to say.
Right, I think she was, and we can change that process anytime we want. So,
yeah,
correct.
it's ours. Yeah.
yeah,
So that might be an easier one, believe it or not, right? Like we can even do pilot and try some things out and see, and maybe hear from our community. How's it working, or what isn't working? And then once again, our community has wisdom. So they'll let us know what we need to be doing. And then 15, public comment in front of each agenda item. So this would allow our community, especially if there are important issues that quite a few community members feel important about, that can be helpful, because that still gives folks a chance to speak on whatever the issue is before we start our business. So we're still in compliance with OPMA. And then also another aspect of this is having so like a couple districts shared with me that their superintendent, knowing that there was a very important issue going on in the district, as part of they would always speak up first before public comment. So, and some of the feedback I heard on this is when they were addressing and speaking on or giving updates to what is important and happening, then that actually could help community members, because whatever the information that they needed or wanted, or they could, you know, have that as just further information, even if not all the information's in, you know, like here's where we're at, that's what we have for now, more to follow, or something like that. Same with if a community member comes and has questions that maybe because it's very complicated system and lots of barriers, they're coming to us with questions or needs that may not be from us to give back, but Dr. Herndon knows who to connect them with, what, you know, like, and to who in the district will follow up with them. And so Dr. Herndon might be able to do that, but then at the next meeting, let us all know that, you know, so and so was connected with, you know, Mr. Dragonoff, or, you know, whoever, to sort of for their need. And so then there's like a feedback loop and a community transparency and accountability that our people are getting taken care of. And because I know a lot of the work that's happening, and I know that Dr. Herndon is doing a lot of great work. It's oftentimes behind the scenes, and folks don't always get to see what the board is privileged to get to see at times. And so that was something that came up. It's not just our board, right? It's happening to quite a few of our boards. And so that was something. And then the transcription translation. So we had at our last meeting, there was, we learned that 60% of our students at Cascade View are English language, are identified as English language learners. 50% of the students at Thorndike are identified as English language learners, and then 25% at Tukwila are English language learners. That's a large amount of our families that very well might be English language learners. And so limiting our way of hearing from our community to typed English is not the best. We are doing our families a disservice. And so if there is a way for us to have resources, or, you know, something that allows, I've heard from teachers, I've actually heard from multiple teachers that have had parents come to them expressing concerns and wanting to talk to us or tell us, but because they don't do email, because it's all in English, it's a barrier. And so then the question is, well, then that puts a teacher or a staff member in our district in an uncomfortable position to be, because if it's coming from their email, or, you know, and so it's not, it's just very challenging. I'm just giving examples of barriers. And so those are some, like I said, I go with all on the list, but those are some that I think that we could, because we control how we do things in terms of public comment. I think those, and that would be a work group that I'd be open to be part of.
And I think Flip brought up a very good point of, that's something that the liaisons have done in the past, that it'll be rewarding to see it brought back.
I think also that if we are getting some better technology in terms of doing translation services, things like Google Translate don't do well with certain languages, but technology has made a lot of strides for language translations over the last year or two. So I think having especially processes available on our website that people can at least point to be able to help out with getting whatever that information is, or however someone can get a hold of anybody, whether it be board members or anybody else within the district, will certainly be helpful. Because we also want to make sure that we have that availability to as many different languages as possible beyond just our family liaisons, our top 5 or 6. So those are certainly helpful for getting to be able to answer questions more quickly. But if we have some of the other languages that we don't have a family liaison for, we want to still try and be as responsive as possible to the families. So I think Ms. Chen has been working on quite a few things to help out with a lot of our families, and some technology that hopefully will help, and also helps teachers. I mean, this, you know, I'm just talking about our position, but a lot of our teachers who are interacting with families every day are met with a lot of those challenges as well. They also, I know, want to be able to communicate with those families as quickly as possible and as robustly as possible. So what I can do for this is we can kind of go through this. I mean, quite honestly, I don't see a lot on this list that we can't do. I think we can do most of these things as was previously stated. Some of them just may take a little bit more time on implementation, but by going through this, I can review this with Ms. Core so that we can talk about this in cabinet and hopefully provide something in a couple of these things, a couple of the items that have a more definitive response. A couple of the other ones, like up at the top, there's not a definitive response to those. I think those are more practices that we just need to be able to demonstrate. But a lot of the other items, especially, like number 6 through 19, a lot of those do have some more definitive answers that I can kind of go through that list and then work with staff and be able to have a couple of responses on there.
I really appreciate that, Dr. Herndon. And I'm thinking that if kind of let you take lead there and maybe we hold off from any kind of waiting to hear back, then maybe next meeting or two, if there are additional ones that Director Larson had mentioned, willingness to sort of offer up labor and expertise to kind of help with that. So, I mean, I don't know what y'all think about holding off on work groups for now and kind of waiting to hear back from Dr. Herndon and his cabinet.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, the only thing I would think is that the public testimony, the public comment part really is our part. So those line items, I think if we had a work group, if Bridget, if you and whoever else wanted to work on that and come back with some new policy, some new procedure on that, I think we'd be open to changing the way we're doing that at the meetings, at least. I don't think we have to wait on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Is there anyone else on our board that would be interested? I'm thinking Debbie, you and I can partner up for sure on that one.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great idea.
Which items are we talking about specifically?
Well, there's several, 14, 15. Yeah, 14, 15.
17?
17.
Yeah, 17. There's a couple others. Debbie and I can kind of go through but Director Larson, are you interested in partnering on this? Collective leadership is the way to go. So I'm all for, and I'll just reiterate what Dr. Herndon said, that when it comes to transformational leadership, it's a practice and it's a demonstration, not something that we just know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I can do that. Some of these look like there isn't really a whole lot. It's just a matter of kind of implementing them. So it seems like it's more, going to fall on Debbie to just figure out how to mechanically just do them. So, I mean, I can sit in, but I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to add unless we're talking, I mean, if we're just talking about 14, 15 and 17.
The meeting notices, so sending out meeting notices or invites and summaries is also something that is, I think, would be what thinking about how we as a board promote or invite our community to the table. That might be another one. So that is number 7.
And once you
And
invite them with those in multiple languages, you have to make sure you have interpreters there to facilitate.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, again,
Absolutely.
I can review a couple of those possibilities. That's why, I can take a look at this list. So I think if the board is going to work on a couple of those, there'll be some overlap for sure on that.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank us for interest in this. This is just getting to see how it's worked for other communities. My hope is that it'll improve our practice and our community wisdom will be closer to us as we're working. So thanks, everybody. Debbie, we can follow up later.
All
Sounds good.
right. Thank you, team. I think we're making some progress there. So we're gonna skip over the setting up work teams for now and maybe come back to that if necessary later. Debbie, I need the agenda, sorry. I think we're on to presentations now. Is that right? Thank you.
Sorry.
Question, yeah, I know. Questions only presentations. Does anyone have any further questions on A or B?
Yeah, I've got a couple on A and B, or two on A and one on B, I think.
Anybody else have any? All right, well, Dave, what are your questions on A?
So I'm curious, I guess this is on page 7. It says the Literacy Lucy Calkins Initiative. I'm curious, in the answer it was continuation of our adoption of literacy program. The focus on literacy features across informational expository text. Can you talk, I guess this is for Mr. Howard, can you talk a little bit about what that expansion, I mean, are we, I know there's been a lot of discussion in the literature in general about the Lucy Calkins approach, and are we extending it, or what exactly is going on there?
Hey, good evening, everyone. Love to answer that question. What we're doing right now is with the expository is trying to support our students where they're actually at right now. A lot of our teachers are not using Lucy Calkins at all to actually teach our kids. And so knowing that, as I have gone from site to site, we're trying to supplement books to support our teachers and what they're doing currently. And so, we're doing the best we can right now with COVID and what's been going on to support our kids. But yes, that is to bring in inquiry and some of Bloom's taxonomy to actually move our students forward.
Okay, so this is just expanding on that particular curriculum. Okay. The second thing, and this is kind of a question. This is on your page in the presentation, district improvement plan for 2021, and you have in pages 10 to 13. There's these various goals that look to, as I recall, they're goals for a percentage of students reading at grade level. So they're proficiency measures, and I think in other parts of the document, the focus has kind of been on student growth. And so I'm wondering if we shouldn't have, student growth measures as opposed to proficiency measures. One of the problems with proficiency measures when we're talking about, third grade reading, for example, if we're saying, okay, this year we had 32% of the students were reading at grade level, and next year, we want 45% or whatever, those are just made up numbers. But the problem is that of course it's a different set of students, and we're not, kind of comparing apples to apples there. And so, the growth measures that I've seen, like in iReady with typical growth and stretch growth, they're measuring each individual student based on how much they grow. And so my question is just generally, shouldn't you know, when we're talking about district goals and even school level goals, shouldn't we really be talking, isn't it better to be talking about growth measures rather than proficiency measures?
Well, I think we want our students to have both in the same. I think we want them to be proficient and get to standard. And I think we also want to have our teachers using value-added data so we can triangulate that data with iReady. I don't think we ever want to use one assessment to assess our kids. Our kids are coming in being multilingual. They have various assets, and we want to be able to capture that. And iReady is, we know, is a test that primarily tests our students on English, and that is not according to what our board is headed with our goals. We want to make sure that we're inclusive of all our students and from a race and equity standpoint. And so that's why we're talking about proficiency and value-added data as our other triangulated pieces of data to make sure students are reaching their goals.
So I agree with all that. And so, but on page 13, you're talking, so is this, I don't know, when I look at this document, is this still kind of a work in progress in terms of laying out the different data points that we're going to look at?
I just want to be familiar. Are you looking at the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have it up, so
Okay.
let me get that PowerPoint up so I can see page 13 what you're looking at.
It's page 10.
Okay.
Third grade
Second.
reading one, and the other ones are just different subjects.
It's going to take a minute to load, but it's going to take a minute to load, but where were you at? I don't want to hold this.
No, the only thing that I see presented here is the proficiency standards, and I don't see, you know, student growth measures in the presentation. So I'm not sure, maybe those are somewhere else, or, but it seems to me that you know, because if what I've observed over the years is that, you know, if students are growing, proficiency will take care of itself. So, you know, it seems to me, and particularly for our students, growth is kind of the key measure that we need to be looking at. And when the previous meeting, when we had the school improvement plans with the principals, the elementary, I mean, all of them were talking about, you know, they want to really look at growth measures.
Dave, what I'm hearing is that iReady alone is not the best way to capture how our students are learning or what all that they know. That iReady is problematic for English language learners, for students that experience test anxiety, for students with different types of disabilities. Like it's problematic. And I think that what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Howard, recognizing that we need additional measures that do create a full understanding of what students are learning and how they're learning. And the reason why I sort of insert this and talk about this is I was in a meeting. I participated in the translanguaging training, and I heard from multiple teacher after teacher as we were doing breakouts about how problematic iReady alone as the testing standard to see how our students are learning, and how other teachers are doing, like trying to do formative, and so I'm very supportive, and I'm looking forward to making sure that we're really we're utilizing a measure that is not serving our students and recognizing their learning. In fact, I would even happen to say that it's actually it can be damaging, and I've seen that, heard that, and so that's kind of what I would like to see in future reports from schools, is that it's not just iReady measures.
And I agree that, yeah, iReady is not the only, it's one of many. I mean, I completely agree with that. The issue here is that if you're gonna pick measures, any measures from iReady at all, I think the ones that should be used are growth measures rather than proficiency measures. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, it finally came up. I see you on page 10. That's a snapshot that you're looking at from, well, it's from iReady and from WaKids. So that's a snapshot from our data. So I typically take what we had available to us, and that's what you're looking at. If you're looking at slide 10, is that correct?
Yeah, but that is a proficiency measure as opposed to a growth measure, right?
Yeah, that's coming out of iReady.
Yeah, and you can get growth measures out of iReady as well. I'm just saying, and it sounds like you're saying these are some sample data. These aren't necessarily the exhaustive list of all the measures that we're going to be looking at. Is that?
Yeah, these are just projected measures. If we came in and we set our goals where we want them right now as a minimal target by 2026, 27, that's where we would be if we stayed on course. And, so that's the information there.
Okay, I'm just, yeah, we don't need to go farther other than to say, I think we really need to have, and I think the principals were saying this as well, the growth measures are important. I mean, and I completely agree, iReady is not the only one, but it is a measure. And if we're going to use it, I think we should be using growth measures, but that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Any other discussion about the district improvement plan? All right, let's move to the new teacher academy. Dave, you had a question there?
Yeah, the only question I had there was a question I've kind of asked before, and that is, a number of years ago, we had a fair number of teachers that were coming from the Martinez Foundation program, and they have a particularly good program for recruiting teachers of color and providing them support and retaining them. And apparently we don't have any anymore. And I'm curious about, did our relationship with that organization stop for some reason? And can we repair it, or where are we on that?
I'm not sure right now, so I can follow up with Mr. Dragunov and see what we know about that. I don't know that offhand right now.
Okay.
Good question, though. And I think I thank you for those presentations, both the district improvement plan and the new teacher academy. I think they're moving in the right direction for us. And I think we're going to be able to do some retention of teachers with the support that they're going to get. And that's really important. Anybody else have anything on these questions only presentations? All right, let's move to our action items. We need a motion for the human resources staffing report.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. Is there any discussion? I guess I would like to recognize the years of service that Ron Johnson has been a bus driver. That is, I can't pull it up in front of me, but I believe that's his name. He and I often have find each other at the Pancake Chef, breakfast or lunch. And he is always telling great stories about the kids on his buses. And I know that he has had a positive effect on a lot of those kids as they are transported to school. So he will be missed by a lot of folks. And I just wanted to highlight his years of service.
I agree with that. And also on the report, there's a new bus driver that was hired, and hiring bus drivers at this time of so kudos to the transportation department for finding someone and securing them. That's great.
Yeah. All right, no more discussion. Do we have, I'm sorry, if you affirm this vote, say yes.
Yes.
And if you don't, please say no. All right, sounds like we have a unanimous vote on that one. The next one is approval of the highly capable program plan for 21-22. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion?
Yes, I would like to know how much teacher input we've had on this so far.
I think once we move forward with the plan, we'll get a lot of teacher input. We're just trying to develop a plan and incorporate your wishes as a board around your goals of inclusivity and equity. So as we start to develop that, that's where the cooperation and conversations are going to come up with teachers.
So if they have a different thought than you've outlined, will that be considered?
Oh yeah, we're starting from scratch. So
Okay.
this is not something that's we've taken what we've learned thus far and we're moving in a totally different direction. So we just hit the reset button as we're developing it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tim.
And is this one of the programs where did you give us a book that talked about this? Flexible grouping and collaborative learning?
Yes.
Is that part of the high cap learning?
Yes.
Now? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
You're on it. And you guys
All
should
right.
also have a book that Dr. Herndon okayed as well called Powerless to Powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege here. My daughter went to school in Canada when I was in seminary, and it was an ungraded program. So there were kids of all ages in her classroom, and they moved at their own pace. And so she was there for 3rd and 4th grade. When we brought her back down to the States, we put her into 6th. And it was the end of the school year. Because school up there for me ended early. So she had 2 months of school back down in the States. And instead of putting her at the end of 5th grade, which is where she should be, we put her at the end of 6th grade. And the teachers at that school decided that she should go in the lowest performing 6th grade class because we were moving her up so fast. Well, that lowest performing 6th grade class became a higher performing class because they put this kid in there that was higher performing. And I think that's what you're getting at with that collaborative learning, is letting the higher performing kids bring the other kids up too. And I saw that with my own eyes, and I totally believe in using all of the resources that the kids bring to help one another. So if that's not what you have in this book, well, then I'm sorry, but it worked at that point. And I think I believe in what you're doing here. So thank you. All right.
I've seen the same dynamics in our school district, in classrooms in our school district. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, did we vote on it yet? I don't think so.
No.
So let's vote. If you approve of the plan as it has been presented, please say yes.
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 All right, so that was 4 yeses on that one. That's unanimous. Let's move to the next one. Approval of resolution 918, approving newly elected board directors to attend the Wasda annual conference. And as you know, this is because the certification, at least as I understand it, the certification of the election is actually after the Wasda annual conference. So our policy read that they could attend because they've been certified but not sworn in. This allows Carly to attend the Wasda meeting as one of our directors. So did I get that right, Flip and Deb?
I believe
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
correct.
Okay, good. Thank you. So can we have a motion here?
I
moved.
move that we approve the this so that our newly coming in Director Hoover can attend the conference with us all.
Second,
All right. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Carly, I hope you can see all of our smiles as we take this vote. If you approve this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, that was
Carly
4.
has her hand raised.
Oh, Carly, can you speak to us?
Just 1 second.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I was more kind of doing that as like a whoop whoop kind of a thing. Because that was the only way that I can engage in the moment. Thank you so much. Appreciate
All right, we're whoop whooping with you.
it. Look forward to being with you next time.
All right, thanks, Carly. All right, let's move to the next approval of inclusive practices with, let's see, do we need to do anything here?
I think that might be a revision, so that I think we already took care of it. It just might have been from another, as we were planning the agenda. I'm not sure,
Okay,
Debbie.
so I
Yeah.
think, I think D and E are not action items at this point. So we will just leave them off. I don't know what the process is to,
Do you want them tabled?
Yeah, you would have to table them at this point.
Yeah.
okay, do we have a motion to table them?
I
Both
move
D and
that
E.
we table action items D and E for a future meeting once we have further information.
All right.
second,
All right, is there any discussion? No, I guess there's no discussion on tabling an item. So if you approve to table these items, please say yes.
yes,
Yes.
Aye.
All right, that was 4 yeses. And so that brings us to the end of our work for tonight. Good job, everybody. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
So moved. Second.
All right, well, you've all spoken now. Moved, seconded, and seconded. So at 8:11, do you all approve that we adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for all of you who visited or who witnessed this tonight, and for all of you who participated. And have a good night. We are adjourned. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Aye.